my name is Mina, and what hasn't been mentioned before, I'm also a swimmer. Swimming is, of course, only my hobby, but it's a big hobby. Our country house is next to one lake, and for many years I have been watching the opposite side of the lake and longing to swim across the lake together with friends.
And 3 years ago we did it. 4 people were swimming, 3 adults and 1 child, my brother Simon, and he was the winner.
Exactly. And after the swimming, we introduced 2 other sport activities, running and sports airgun shooting, in order to get a real triathlon. It was a great day spent with the friends. We invited them for a lunch, for a dinner, and it was such a great event. But something amazing happened after this event. People have started calling us and said, "Are you going to organize this event year after? We would like to participate." And I said, "Sure, yes, come and join us." So 2 years later, we were 20 people swimming. Wow! We grew from 4 to 20 people only within 2 years. My family was so happy and pretty tired afterwards. Because when we talked about this event, year 2018, my husband and I realized that this event was much more requiring compared to 2 years earlier. And since we are Agile people, we did a retrospective. We wanted to see which things worked well, which things weren't so good that could be improved. Motivation. We were very good at motivation, right? We didn't even have to motivate our friends. They just called us and wanted to participate in the event. Probably it was due my good emotional contagion. I was talking about swimming so positively all the time. Also, I could give them advices as a former swimmer how to swim. Open water swimming is not always the same as in the swimming pool, you know. So I told them about techniques that maybe it's better to swim breaststroke swimming if you're not very good at freestyle swimming, or maybe if you feel tired, you can turn on the back and do some backstroke strokes. So I was a good role model, and they listened to me, and they also trusted me. We also managed to create a very nice environment of psychological safety. You know, our friends, they brought even their children and let them swim with us. So it was really very good and very positive. But the execution, let's see what happened. We believed that we had a very clear expectations and described to our friends what is the goal, that we had a very clear vision. We put one orange flag on the opposite side of the lake. And also goals. The goal was to swim across the lake as fast as possible. We even had a strategy. And the strategy was that I was supposed to be swimming first as the most experienced swimmer, and having my husband in the last position driving the rescue boat. But when people have started swimming, we could see that they're taking their own paths. So we realized that we had a lot of autonomous families choosing their own paths how to swim. So autonomy, alignment, we weren't so good at that. Some people got very creative. Since I was swimming first, I saw that one friend of mine, he was swimming like zigzag because he has started calculating the wind, and then he said, I save my energy if I am swimming zigzag instead of swimming, you know, the straight direction. So we got really very stressed because we were responsible for people swimming, right? We weren't so good at discipline. You know, some people arrived very late. So we started the event very late, and then we were behind the schedule the whole day because we wanted to achieve with that sport event, and then after that to have both lunch and dinner and etc. and having some fun time with our friends. So putting all together, we had a scaling problem, right? And when you put everything together, since, as you have heard, apart from being a swimmer, I'm also a software engineer, and I have been working with software development for more than 20 years. As a developer, architect, developer manager, and now next week I'm starting my new position as a Chief Technology Officer at Paradox Interactive. And when I saw all these things, I realized they're the things that are my everyday challenges at work, right? And I tried to group them in 3 domains: business, technology, and leadership. And when I looked at them, I was thinking, when people are talking about leadership, usually they're mentioning those 3 domains. So maybe it's not something very new. But one thing that I have started thinking about, are these 3 domains completely independent, loosely coupled, or they're tightly coupled? Maybe there are some intersections between these domains. Let's see. But let's start from the basics. What does it mean to lead people? Usually you start the career by leading yourself, right? You get some assignments and then you want to complete them. After a while, maybe you start leading others, formally or informally. Maybe you become a team manager or Agile coach. You're helping other people to grow. After a while, maybe you continue with your managerial path and you start having several teams reporting to you. So you are leading the leaders. After that, you become maybe a functional leader, head of some department. After that, a business leader, director of some department, a group leader, C-level position, and then you have an enterprise leader, CEO. It's the leadership pipeline described by Ram Charan. And I can really recommend reading his book and articles about the leadership pipeline, because you can imagine that different steps in this leadership pipeline requires different leadership skills. But there is one thing that is common regardless of the level where you are in the leadership pipeline. And of course, it applies both for formal and informal leaders. So regardless where you are in this leadership pipeline, you always have 2 customers of your leadership. You have followers, direct reports, people whom you lead and help to empower and grow, right? And at the same time, you have your bosses and your managers to whom you have to deliver business performance, right? So you have 2 customers of your leadership. And when we continue thinking about leadership in this way, that's why I liked this definition of leadership proposed by René Mauborgne and Chang Kim. They're professors on business strategy from the INSEAD Institute. That leadership can be perceived as a service that the people in organization buy or don't buy. What happens if people buy your leadership? They will act with engagement and commitment, right? If they don't buy your leadership, they will just disengage. And now the question is, what are the important properties in that service so that people from all levels in your organization, both from the team levels, but also from that senior management team, enterprise level, buy your leadership? And since I've already mentioned, I'm a software engineer, so when I was thinking leadership as a service, I have started thinking about enterprise service bus. Do you remember that concept with a service-oriented architecture and enterprise service bus? The whole idea is that the enterprise service bus implements communication patterns between mutually communicating services. So you have a bus, you have a different services, and the main responsibility of such bus is service binding, management, listening, load balancing. You see one service, it has too much to do, let's load balance the work, protocol switching, security, privacy. And look at these properties. It's exactly what we leaders are doing, right? Service binding to connect 2 teams who should collaborate together, management, listening, trying to capture what is happening in organization, load balancing. You see, this team has too much to do, let's load balance the work to another team, protocol switching, and privacy. So, because of that, we can say, in fact, that a good leader is, in fact, a good
enterprise service boss.
Exactly. So, enterprise service boss. Let's see which communication patterns he should use. If you continue with this metaphor, service-oriented architecture, we have two main communication patterns. One is orchestration, when you have the main orchestrator who is sending requests and responses to different services, right? You send a request and then you wait for a response and then you can continue with another service. And it's exactly what we are doing as managers during our one-to-ones, right? You are talking to people, asking, listening, and so on. So it's kind of orchestrating communication pattern. On the other side, we have another pattern that is nowadays very popular, especially with the microservices architecture, event-driven or reactive. You have an event stream and different services who are publishing or subscribing for different events on that event stream. And it's exactly what we are doing when we are delivering a business value, right? You are writing reports, putting that somewhere on some share drive space, some other managers are reading that, maybe your manager, and so on. So let's try to fill this quadrant. If there is no orchestrating or not reactive communication style from one manager, it's no good leadership from my perspective. What happens if you are only orchestrating? Then you have only the main focus on your direct reports, on your team or teams. From one side, that's very good because you are a very engaged leader or coach, you are working with a team. But from the company perspective, is it good to have only one very high performance team and the rest of the organization does not follow? It's not good. So if you are only orchestrating, you are missing that big picture. So it's not good to see only like my teams and help them to be the high performance teams. You have to see the big picture. What happens if you're applying only that reactive pattern? It means that the main focus is on the company strategy, vision on that high level. On the one side, that's good that you understand the big picture, but if you forget that orchestrating and your teams, what happens? They will disengage because they feel like you are just here up in the cloud and don't understand our everyday needs. So the best leadership style is that hybrid model where you are combining orchestrating with the event-driven communication style. And as I used to say, in order to be a good leader, you have to be a good helicopter pilot and have an ability to see the big picture and very fast directly go down and understand your team's needs and switch up and down and up and down. And of course, it's challenging if we are going back to that leadership pipeline. If you are coming to that higher positions, it's so easy that you forget to go down and see team's needs or department's needs. And I visualized that quadrant in this way with the enterprise service boss and his different communication styles and important properties. But now we have been talking only about the communication styles. But let's go back to my circles, business, technology, and leadership, and try to see one thing is your managerial communication style and how you work with your teams and your managers. But let's see if these circles are completely independent, or maybe there are some intersections between them. What do you think? Are there some intersections, some things that are equally important for each of those two combinations? Let's find out that. Let's start with the business. Each company should have a clearly defined vision, current state, where you are today, and the strategy, how to go and reach your vision, right? And it's very important. I know that many companies are struggling with having a clear and understandable vision. And having a good and clear vision and strategy is very important, especially in agile organizations. Do you know why? Why is it important, especially in agile organizations?
Because you're experimenting your way towards an unknown outcome, so it's almost like a guiding star to tell you whether you're succeeding or not.
Yes, it's partially true. But let's see this autonomy and alignment challenge. You have a different organizational structures, and some organizations are high on autonomy, some are high on alignment or discipline. Organizations that are not high on autonomy or on alignment are bureaucratic organizations. Usually you have one HIPPO, highest paid person in organization. Maybe he has some vision and strategy, but usually he's not sharing with the team, and all teams and people are just afraid doing their work, and nothing good happens. Organizations with a high alignment and discipline are hierarchical organizations. Usually you have clear structures of responsibilities, reporting lines in hierarchical organizations. But what is the problem with such organizations which are high only on alignment, on discipline? Because all decisions have to be approved from all higher management. So usually it takes time. If you want to drive some new initiative or something, it has to be approved. So usually they're working intact, but they're moving so slowly towards the vision. And you know, the current market does not allow that moving slowly. Then you will have some other competitors who will capture your market share. Organizations which are high on autonomy are typically startup organizations. At many startup organizations, maybe they have a good business idea, but usually vision is vague, pretty, it's not so clear. They don't have a clear strategy. You have a lot of motivated people doing a lot of things, driving a lot of initiatives, but they're not aligned towards the same vision and goals. And the goal is to achieve that business agility. What does it mean? If you really have a clear vision, then you can have autonomous teams that you don't have to manage in a traditional way, which will choose their own path, but they will be automatically aligned towards that vision and goal. And it's the way how we can achieve a business agility. And that's why it's important in agile organizations, because the part of agile organization is to allow autonomy and initiative to the teams, because there are a lot of other benefits from that, and we are going to cover later on. And one important part, when you say, now you're going to think, oh, it's easy for her to say it should be clear vision and the strategy, but how you really break down the vision, how you explain vision to your teams. It's really a tough but an important task for every manager to describe the company vision and strategy, to break it down to the corresponding teams and explain to them what does it mean to you. My experience is also, if you manage to visualize your strategy in a good way, you benefit a lot from that. Now I'm going to share one very powerful tool that I'm using to visualize the strategy. It's that strategy canvas. So maybe for the people who attended the Blue Ocean Strategy talk saw that, but I think it has multi-purposes, and now we are going to cover that. Strategy canvas is a canvas that you can really very easily to create. Now I took one example from the video games industry, but it does not apply for any company. I just have chosen some examples. Here you define a main competing factors, the main properties of the company. Maybe you can say you break down the main value proposition and define that. For example, in video games industry, we can say, and you must have the price also as the first factor. It's recommended by the creators of the canvas. Graphics, it's an important factor in video games industry. If games are tactical or not, if they're realistic, if it has multiplayer platform, if it depends on Steam, if it is easy to install, if it's only PC video games or they're available on mobile. So you choose a set of competing factors or important value proposition for your company. And here, vertically, you define the offering level. Are you investing a lot or just a little in each factor? And let's see, as I said, it's just an example. So when you have chosen the main parts of your strategy and vision, you put that offering level and you get something that is your strategy value curve. I think it's a great idea to do that because you can do that on many different levels. When the company defines their vision and strategy, then you can choose slightly different competing factors and visualize them what it means for your team so that they understand what is also the goal. It's like the current state is as is strategy, what we are doing today. Then you go from here and say, now for the next year or Horizon 1 or Horizon 2 is to improve some factors. For example, we want to have more realistic games. We don't want that they depend so much on Steam. So it's not that you are always increasing competing factors. You are calculating and tweaking them. Maybe you want to increase that easy installation process. And for example, you would like to have more mobile games. And then it's to be strategy. And then from my perspective, it's a very easy way how you can visualize that and have on the walls in the company, in your department, that people understand where we are today and what we would like to achieve. Also, the beauty of this strategy canvas is that it can be applied on the company strategy level, but even on the product level. So we are using that a lot for the product leadership, because then you have a different features of your products, and then you can visualize how much you want to invest in each product. And that's very good, because when people who work with you, then you don't have to tell them you should implement this feature in this way. You're just defining the outcome of the feature, and then they can be creative and find a way how to go there. Here you can also, multi-purpose of this strategy canvas, maybe you can draw also your competitors' strategy value curve to get some idea. Maybe competitors are not investing too much in this. Maybe we can get that competitive advantage if we invest even more in this competing factor. So I think it's a very simple and nice visualization that covers a lot. And regarding that autonomy in the teams and alignment, maybe you remember what Jeff Gotthelf said, the creator of Lean UX. He said, management needs to declare business outcomes they wish to achieve and then set up their teams to figure out how to go there. And it's exactly what you are doing with the canvas. You just define those outcome levels and then leave it to the teams, how they're going to organize and how they can find a creative solution in order to achieve that. So it's a really very good way of aligning the teams and allowing the creativity and initiatives. So the first intersection between business and leadership is that challenge, alignment and autonomy. How to achieve autonomous team that are aligned towards the same goals. My advice is work a lot on clear vision and strategy and try to visualize that in a good way. You are going to gain a lot from that. Let's continue with the business. So, as we said, assuming that the company has defined very well their current state, desired state, and then you define the strategy how you achieve the desired state. And you start executing on your strategy, right? But the real life is, all of a sudden it's coming some other things, And it's like, oh, just for this customer, we have to fix this. Just for this market, we have to fix this. So you're applying most decisions are strategic, but there are also some tactical solutions. And then you go away a little bit from your strategy, and realistic state is that you end up in this state this a little bit further away from your desired state. And then you have some gap. But if the gap is small, then it's okay. This graph means that you applied mostly strategic solutions. Let's say another situation. What happens if you have applied only those tactical solutions, just for this customer, this market, just for this situation, that you haven't followed your strategy? Then you end up in a state that is much more further from your desired state. The gap is big, and it always results in a missed revenue, believe me. So a leader, it's a responsibility of each leader to monitor that gap. Of course, it's not only you who decide about, you have to fight for and work together with your peers, but you're responsible to see if you have applied too many tactical solutions, and you end up with this big gap, and then it's directly missed revenue. So it's not going to be good. So that's why I'm saying mind the gap. It's very important. It's from business perspective, but what happens with the architecture if you have applied too many tactical solutions? Maybe many of you are familiar with that intentional architecture versus emergent design concept. So when you have defined your strategy, you have your product strategy, and then you create your technology roadmap and strategy, how to get it there. And usually it's that safe definition. Usually you have teams of architects, lead developers, who are creating that intentional or target architecture. And of course, they don't know all the details. They're just planning for like next quarter, next year, and giving some directions. When teams start to implement on that target architecture, they discover some things that you couldn't have planned from the beginning, because it's normal. You couldn't have known all things that can be constraints or challenges. So that emergent design that emerges from the implementation teams, it starts to correct intentional architecture. And it's great, because it should be like that. You couldn't have planned everything from the beginning. But what is important also, that intentional target architecture constrains the emergent design, that it does not emerge all over the place. If you have applied too many tactical solutions on your system, just this customization, just this one-off solution, you are going to end up in only emergent design, feature built on features. And your system architecture is not going to feel well. It's not going to be stable and good. So it's also responsibility of a leader to take that accountability for technical and architectural roadmap. Of course, it's not leaders who are creating that. They're working with the architects and developers. But it's their accountability, because they know what will happen if you had too many tactical solutions, too much of emergent design. So this good balance between strategic and tactical solutions, because you must have tactical solutions, you cannot just execute on your strategy, it's the real life. But that monitoring and finding a good balance, it's in the intersection of business and technology. Do you have any idea what is in the intersection between technology and leadership? No ideas.
Inspiring mastery.
Sorry?
How about inspiring, like engineering mastery?
Yes, maybe. But there is something that Mel Convoy said a long time ago, that organizational structure is always mapped on the system architecture. How you organize your team is going to be mapped directly on your system architecture, and vice versa. Probably many of you have seen this Martin Fowler great example. When we had those traditional monolithic architecture and traditional teams like database team, client team, server team, then it resulted directly in the monolithic architecture. And then microservices architecture became very modern. People are moving there, refactoring their architecture, but they forgot to reorganize their teams. And it's equally important. If you don't have a cross-functional teams who are taking that vertical responsibility for the whole one or the set of the microservices, you are not going to achieve that. So please think about that when you are refactoring your architecture or when you are reorganizing your teams, because those things are tightly coupled. It has to follow together. Here is another example that I recently went through at my previous job. We decided to be a DevOps organization that we weren't at the first place. We had those dedicated service teams, operation teams, teams who are taking care about our BI reports and so on. And we had that kind of organization that were vertically scaling. When you are building up capabilities to each teams that are specialists with their area. And then we said, now it's going to be DevOps teams. Each team should have take the whole vertical responsibility. That more horizontal scaling that you have like a lot of servers, a lot of teams responsible for different things. But when we reorganize the teams, what we forgot, or not forgot, but what we discovered, so many dependencies in the architecture. You cannot just say this team is responsible there because the architecture was built vertically scaled. And then that's why it's a great example how you always have to think about refactoring the architecture and then reorganizing the teams in order to achieve the best of that. So regardless if you're scaling up or scaling out the organization, the architecture, and so on. So the convoy law comes in the intersection of technology and leadership. Now we can put back other intersections, but one is left here. What is here? What do you think? UI. You. No. But it's not me, but I can say from my perspective what is there. It's the innovation. Let's see why. When you start innovating, you're starting from different perspectives, right? First, you have that business analysis, market situation analysis, competitors analysis, thinking about that SWOT analysis, what are our strengths and weaknesses as a company, opportunities, threats on the market. Usually, insights functions are part of business or marketing, collecting all those qualitative insights. What do customers really want and need, doing those surveys and interviews. On the other side, you have a technology. Maybe most of us work at the IT companies, and each company has some technical capabilities. Maybe you can use your technical capabilities and convert to the competitive advantage. So innovation can come from that place also. Data-driven innovation. How you can use your data if you haven't built the data lake, Lambda architecture to support historical data, real-time data. You have to build those capabilities on your technical side. Also, collecting all those quantitative data. And also leadership. As a leader, you have to enable creativity in your teams, right? As we are talking about alignment, autonomy, as you have also mentioned, that people feel empowered and creative. Now I'm not going to go into the neuroscience, but probably many of you have read all those researches that we are mostly creative when we feel comfortable, when we have that environment of psychological safety, then that limbic system works in best way. And also as a leader, you have to help your people to drive initiatives that something really happens. So in my book, the innovation is a combination of those top-down things that are coming outside from the company, market analysis, competitors, what other people are doing, but also those bottom-up things coming from technology, technical capabilities, from the teams, from the data, and so on. And also, what is important, because I'm so passionate about the innovation management, and it belongs to some other talk, so I'm not going to explore today much, but I have to go back to my strategy canvas and to show to you that you can also use that for inspiration for innovation. Because if you have visualized your strategy, where you are today, where you want to be, where are the competitors, then you get more inspiration. Aha, there are some things, maybe we should collect more data from that perspective in order to investigate this competing factor or feature. Or maybe competitors are not doing this thing. Maybe we should run some qualitative insights survey or interviews with the customers in order, because then we can turn that into our competitive advantage. So I think that you are gaining a lot from this strategy canvas, and it's very easy to create that. You don't need some complex tools. Of course, choosing those competing factors or features, it's not mathematics that it's out of the box how you choose. So you have to work with your teams and people in order to get some good perspective on the industry and on yourself as a company. But from my perspective, if you should have one takeaway from today, it's try to experiment with this strategy canvas. I can guarantee that you are going to achieve a lot. Here's one example for Netflix, how they found their blue ocean or market niche. They visualized the red strategy value curves are those cable TVs, their competitors that exist on the market. And from innovation perspective, the idea is that you create your strategy value curve in that way that it diverges from all other value curves. Because if it looks like the same, what does it mean? That you are investing equally much in each competing factors as your competitors. And also, when you're doing that innovation work, we are using a lot of that strategy canvas, because then we are thinking about those new competing factors that we could introduce. As a Netflix were thinking, like, they eliminated a lot of things that existed on the market, because it's also another thing that you would like to preserve, that cost and value balance. You don't want just to introduce new things in your value proposition, then cost will go up. And then you have to be smart in that tweaking the strategy to eliminate things that cost you, but you are not gaining, you're not going to be better than your competitors, and then introduce some new things. So it's just an example how you can really, it's a multi-purpose of usage of using that strategy canvas. And now I try to visualize all these things to put them together. And now I'm repeating again what I said from the beginning. So it's only my perspective, what are the most important properties when leading software development? And what are the most important properties when you are trying to satisfy both your managers and senior management team and your teams? So maybe if you focus only on one area, how to build the high performance teams, maybe some other properties becomes more important. But here is like much more doing that marionette doll, you know, which strings you have to draw so that you can get a really movement that whole organization by your leadership skills. So you have each domain has some important properties, and then you have the intersection between domains, and also here explanations of them. And now I'm going to wrap up today's talk with our marathon triathlon from 2019, this year. I haven't mentioned that in this slide. So what do you think? How many participants did we have this year? So year before we had 20.
16?
No. So as I said, yes, I'll give you an explanation. We kept the same number, around 20. Why? Because as I already mentioned to you, we got so stressed that 2018. We realized that we don't have a scalable platform for so many participants, and we were bad leaders. We were stressed all the time. We were behind the schedule all the time, just forcing people, now we have to do that and that. So it felt like our backlog was too optimistic. Also, we worked a lot on our vision, clear vision. Really, now we have a much better vision, and then get people swimming, because it's really difficult to see something on the opposite side of the lake when you're swimming and have goggles and water in your eyes. So we really work a lot of that, also on discipline, and we also talk to our friends before which strategies they're going to choose for swimming in order to understand. So this year it was such a great event. It went so smoothly, so we kept the same number of participants, but we improved a lot of things. And now we feel ready for next year, 2020, to scale up the number of participants, now when we have a more scalable platform. So that was everything from me today. Thank you for listening, and maybe you have some questions for me.
So I've worked at a lot of organisations which have a very clearly defined strategy, but what you find is that when you get to the implementation team level, that very rarely counts for anything. And the issue seems to be that there's lots of management layers between the senior management making the strategy and the teams doing the work. And what I often find is that the motivation of the middle managers is not towards the strategy, it's towards things like bonuses, size of department, etc., etc. And an example of that might be they might look at the strategy and realise that their department might need to get smaller, and they think, well, that's not good, so let's work a different way and see if we can work around that. So how would you get around that issue?
First, I would say that I would work a lot on the company culture and leaders that I have in organization. Because I just read one wonderful book, and maybe it will come in my next talk, but I can really recommend from a leadership perspective. It's a Harvard Business Review book. It's called To Manage Yourself. And it's a lot of different articles written by different famous people about being a good leader. And it is said that the best leaders are leaders who has the same core values and beliefs and vision in private life and at work. So I would say that leaders that you are mentioning, probably they are not these type of leaders, they have some other drivers. So I would work a lot on the management group, on leaders. If you're in a position that you cannot change your higher management team or higher management, I would raise the importance that it's important that you have to believe in that, because you cannot create that your team believes in strategy if you have a CEO who does not have that sparks in her or in his eyes, and you really see the belief for that strategy. And usually that's the problem when you have those bonuses driven or some like power driven people, then they don't really believe in the strategy, and then you don't get people with you. I would raise the importance that people really, if you want to motivate people, you really have to, they really have to understand that why you're doing that. And maybe then it will be revealed pretty quickly that the main why is not that company purpose and company strategy and vision, but it's some other whys why they're doing that. But it's not an easy answer, and it's, and I think it applies at many companies, unfortunately. And I can also add, I saw some examples, and it's really sad that even companies who manage to create great company cultures, it's also related to that market changes. If everything is going well, everyone is nurturing that nice company culture. And then when that S-curve, high market saturation, you cannot grow on the market, usually they change the management team, put those command control people and destroy the company culture. And usually it can happen very quickly, and it's really a sad fact. But I'm saying we as formal, informal leaders from different perspectives, we can work with our teams to explain what is the purpose, what we want to achieve, why, how, and work from that perspective, at least to help them to understand. Yes, please.
How many people are you prepared for next year in your swimming session? Do you have an upper limit?
No, we haven't thought about that, but it's a really very good question. Maybe we should put some that max limit. It's much more like we would like to have all our friends that are interested in that. But what we did this year, we didn't spread out that thoughts to other people who didn't know about that event, because we felt we will see. But it's also that scalable architecture, because when you have like now we have only one rescue boat, then we have to have more rescue boats and some other things that we have to invest in. But we will see.
I have a question around your strategy canvas.
Yes.
You had offering factors on the left-hand side. How do you go about calculating them, and how do you make sure they estimated as accurate as you can, especially the competitors' line?
Yes, it's a very good question, and it's not easy. It's much more you try to estimate them from your perspective. But another thing that I haven't mentioned, what is proposed when you are creating that strategy canvas, it's very important that you involve people from different parts of organization, so that you have a different perspectives, both development, product, marketing, because we have all the different perspectives on the things. Maybe even to ask some business analysts who are analyzing different companies on the market. And as I said, unfortunately, it's not mathematics that you can give a clear number. But what I can tell you, when we have started working on that, just from it was a team in the company from different departments. Those canvases, when you created that, it's such a eye-opening effect, even if it's not maybe completely accurate. When you create that, you create your competitors, then you believe that you're doing things differently, and then you see, oh, everything converts in the same way. So I think you can start with something that is maybe not completely accurate, but it's much better to start with something. You will get some, some picture of the market. Probably you're not completely opposite, right? But if you do that, involve people from different departments, or if you're doing on the smaller, like for the product canvas, involve people from development, from product, from design, that you have a little bit different perspectives on that.
Hi, I have a question on your top right diagram, specifically on business agility. Mm-hmm. So when you compare the 4 quarters, do you think that any employee is in the position to deliver in line with that approach? So I wonder, do you think that to deliver with business agility, you need to have a specific culture and specific training and a specific mindset for people to perform well?
It's a very good question. I have to think a little bit. First, I think it's really important. It's not enough only to visualize the strategy and to explain to your teams, of course. Company culture, mindset, definitely. Because I can say also from my experience, all people does not want to have autonomy. So it's, of course, it's not one diagram fits all. You have to find a good balance, because you have people which you have in the team. So to start to work on them and find a good way. But of course, some people really enjoy autonomy and they're very creative. Some people are completely lost. They don't know what to do. So that's why then you have to be also a coach or mentor. And it's really a very good question, because it's even more important perspective than just visualizing the strategy. To get people that you really create such environment where you can have autonomous teams, and then the only issue is like that they're aligned towards the strategy. Thank you.
Excuse me. Hello. This is a sort of similar question to the first question asked. Most of the organizations I've worked in have wanted to work in an agile fashion, looking for agile leadership, but it's always been very hostile. So the top people actually say, yeah, let's do agile with a small a, capital A, whatever, mid A. And they basically have the same kind of ideas as you've got here encapsulated, but actually filtering that out to the staff itself, to the employees, to the developers, whether it's a DevOps team, or not, is really very, very difficult. So how do you operate in a hostile environment? How do you implement those? How do you begin to even implement some of those things that you're talking about? Thank you.
Thank you, very good question, and I know it's very relevant. It's not easy. If I could choose, I think all those things are much easier if you have those plain, horizontally scaled organizations, when you don't have so many levels of management, because then you lose, then you have to break down the vision and strategy on each level, and probably you're doing a lot of things, having a lot of waste in the system. So one thing is if you can keep the plain structure as much as possible, and I think it's also that horizontally scaled organizations, you can achieve pretty much when you're having like maybe you don't have just 2 levels, maybe you end up with the 3 levels, but you can achieve a lot with having maybe even 15 teams reporting 1 person, So, and then first it's easier, then you don't have those long vertically, levels of management where you can lose that, how you to break down the strategy. Then I would work really with all leaders, that all of them, but all, enterprise level, between those, as I used to say, scrum of scrum levels who are working with different teams, and at the team level, understand all those things and importance of describing why and setting a strategy, and they're really sure that their teams understand that, why we are going there and so on. I would raise, I also had another example at one of my previous companies. One year we got a strategy that no one bought that, because the vision was expressed in numerical numbers, and you cannot express vision. So many people got disengaged. And then we talked to the management team, and it was like, I think they just didn't think about the consequences, or not only consequences, but it's not a good way to express the vision and strategy, in numbers, how much of the market share you want to achieve. So I would say, like, giving a feedback to your manager. My team does not understand. They don't understand that strategy. And then talk to your manager, and hopefully something will happen on the higher level. And also coming back to that helicopter pilot, I think it's also people on all levels must understand they have to switch up and down. If you're just in the cloud planning vision strategy and forgot on the teams who are executing on that, you're losing, it's not business agility, it's not a good leadership style. You must have ability. I'm not saying that you should micromanage, no, but ability to go down to understand what is happening here and go switch down and back and forth. I hope that I answered a little bit. There is no great recipe for organizations.
Mina, may I add something?
Yes, of course.
Just to say. Just to add, only because I've been in the training room all day. I came from co-training the Coaching for Enterprise Agility, which is one of 2 training tracks we have in the IC Agile Enterprise Agility track. There's 2 classes, Enterprise Agility Masterclass and Coaching for Enterprise Agility. And we tackle exactly those questions. How to bring agility into the enterprise, because as Mina said, it isn't easy. It's a lot easier when you have a CTO like Mina, of course. But if you want to come and ask me at the end, I can absolutely tell you more. Thank you, Mina.
Thank you.
Just final one, I guess. Hi, thank you for your talk. That was very nice. Just to further on the excellent question about people and how you get the right people in your organization, what do you think is in your opinion, the kind of defining characteristic of a good top-level leader, especially in terms of people? You know, how do you get people to grow? I imagine you need people with a growth mindset, so you need to hire right. So how do you do that? So I guess a couple of questions.
Yes, but great questions. So I can just say from my experience and my perspective, what I believe it's a good leader. I think one very important thing is transparency. Everything that you are doing, that you get like information, you share that with the team so that they understand, constantly feeding them what is happening in the organization. Then explaining that and running that inclusive leadership. Then he said, like, now the management asks, we have to do that. Let's talk together how we can find a way. Maybe I have my vision and perspective on that. I will share. I believe that maybe you should do that, but let's collect your feedback, and usually you get even better idea. But then so there are two good side effects. Usually you get even better ideas than you had from the beginning as a leader, but also you get people motivated because they feel they are part of a solution and they're engaged. And also, from my perspective, because I'm coming from a technical development perspective, I was working as an architect and developer for more than 15 years. So managerial part is pretty recent for me when I started. I would say that explain also, because it's so easy that people in the IT development department, they're a little bit isolated. Usually they're saying, oh, they don't have to understand the market situation, business strategies, like they're just implementing. Explain to them all those things, because when I wanted to understand how all those things are related to each other, how market works, and I'm not saying that I know everything, but all my learnings, I'm sharing that with the team. And then I got that excellent feedback from developers. All of a sudden, now I found my why. I understand why we are doing that. And then, so I would say, like, sharing is caring. Tell them everything that you know, and then inclusive leadership, transparency. And also work with the people. They're different. You're never going to have a team of highly motivated, self-driven people. You are always going to have a mixture of self-driven people and people who are sitting and waiting that you explain 5 times something, and so that's the reality. But on the other side, it's good that we are different. But I'm just saying in my beliefs, and I also inspired by that To Manage Yourself book by Harvard Business Review. I think it's also so important that your team feels that your core values and your inner beliefs are aligned to the company core values and beliefs, that you really believe in that, and then you create that much better engagement and motivation.
Thank you. Have you read Peopleware?
No?
By Tom DeMarco?
No?
I think you'd enjoy that book.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Great tips.
Hi, how would you go about measuring the agility of a company? Like, at what point can a company say, yeah, we're agile now, done it, job done?
I can say I'm much better at measuring data and some other things, but maybe not agility. And I think, I don't know what to answer, because I have to tell you a short story. I have started with the Agile software development very early. I'm an early adopter, because the Agile Manifesto was published in the year 2001 in February. I met my husband in June 2001, and he was talking about the Agile Manifesto on our first date. So, completely true story. So I really liked him and decided to keep him, so then we got married. So I have been applying Agile and Lean principles since then. But when I'm talking about, I'm just saying that Agile and Lean are methodologies that inspire me a lot. And I would say that everything that is Agile is not good, and everything that is good is not Agile. It's much more if you have a, maybe you read it than Lean, this is Lean book written by Niklas Modig. He's saying nowadays everything that is good, it is lean or agile. I mean, you should not mix, of course, there are a lot of good things in agile and lean. But I would say the most important for an organization is not to focus, are we really and measure agile or not? To understand what do we have for a problem, how we can solve that, and have we improved? Do we deliver more? If they found some other principles that are not agile, great. I have another great example. It's still a little bit mystery for me. You know, I have been living in Sweden for 20 years, and Minecraft, the great Swedish company that created Minecraft games, now they're bought by Microsoft. They're never attending any conference. You know, there are other Swedish companies, Spotify, iZettle, you know exactly how agile they are. Minecraft, nobody knows. Were they agile? No, they're saying, we were a bunch of happy hackers and created great things. You don't have to, I'm saying, now it's a just example. If you are measuring are you agile or not, it's not a guarantee for success. I would say measure improvement. I think the most important for each organization is continuous improvement, that you improve from different perspectives, that you deliver more, maybe you earn more, because we all want to, the end goal is to create a good business value. So, but to measure that agility, I don't know how I would do that. Yes, if it is the answer. So, the mic? Oh, mic.
Hi, when you're talking about real agility and organisationally you've got a relatively extreme version of self-managed teams in some form of holacracy or whatever, how do you keep effective alignment with the goal and the vision?
Yes, I think that thank you for your question. It's also good because I was also at the organization that were high on initiative, self-driven people. And when we realized that the company grew like 50% more employees, but we are not delivering more things. And then we introduced that concept of creating a company backlog. Let's see what is in the company backlog, like from the company perspective, and trying to involve people from all departments to agree. What is focus? And then first when we created the company backlog, it was 100 of items, and it was like top high level items. Then you realize that you have a lot of things, a lot of initiative, but things are not going out. And you know, it's that principle, start finishing, stop starting. But I think first, because usually people don't believe, they think, oh, we just want to do that, it's my thing. But when you visualize, not strategy canvas, just create a backlog, but from the company perspective, and put all people in from the company, like relevant people in the room, product development, marketing, then all of a sudden you see that you have a lot of ongoing things. What was interesting also when we have started to work on that big room planning, now we are going to agree dependencies, you realize everybody agrees, and afterwards some product people change their priorities without notifying other people. You know, it's a human behavior but it relates again to those tactical solutions. You know, they have to understand that they're going to fail if they have just changed something and don't follow the strategy. So I think it's not easy. I would say visualization, try to see from the company perspective, company backlog, and also ask senior management team, what is focus, like 5 top items focus from the company perspective. Usually they don't have a good answer, they cannot agree, and then they give you a list of 20 items. And you know, you cannot focus on 20 things at the same time, you're going to fail. So I would say also raise that importance on focus. Let's focus on 3 things, ship them, and continue with something. But start with the company backlog. It's going to tell you a lot.
Yeah, I was.
Oh, you have to speak. It captures the sound.
Okay. So I was just going to say, part of that prioritization was I used to do a one-pager process with my team, and we used to have this thing called stop, start, continue, car park, drain. Nobody wants to put anything down the drain. Everybody wants to start things. Nobody wants to stop things, and they want to continue everything. So a good tool I found was that if you try and put it on one page, It's a way of actually getting alignment on the team and actually getting to really think about prioritization. But you get these kind of personal things come out where they fiercely defend the item that they're related to, and sometimes they don't think about the bigger picture. So just an example of what I've used to try and flush that out with the team. So
yes, it's a good idea. Also, when I was talking about the company backlog, I think it's also another thing. It's not that people don't want to complete and finish their things. Usually they work in their team, maybe with the closest teams, and they got some dependency or some other department, and then they just start waiting for them, and then it's not prioritized on their side, and all people drop that. So that's why it's important to capture from that higher perspective, like dependencies, what things are really like in the flow. And also it's another technique, that value streams that you define end to end. This project or these things must be done. Those are people who are working on that, and it start and finish things. But it's not easy. Well, you know, when you get dependency or constraint, then it's so easy just to drop and take something else creative. So maybe you have some questions for the enterprise service boss. Uh-huh.
Hello.
Hello.
What is your name first?
Uh-huh.
Maxim. So when you do the presentation, do you enjoy the content?
Jest używał w prezentacji.
Yes.
Wait, I'm not done. What do you like about it?
What?
What do you like about it?
Šta ti se sviđa?
I don't know.
Well done, you did a great job.
And if we don't have any more questions, since you saw, I really enjoy sharing everything that I know, so you're really free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to stay in touch with me, if you have some like feedback or questions, or you know, just to share your knowledge with me. I'm here on LinkedIn mainly, so just send me an invite. Joke.